They ruled kingdoms no one remembers, loved men no one believed in, and wrote letters no one ever read until now. Hidden in a drawer that squeaks like a mouse, with secrets beneath a fossilized biscuit and a royal tax form from 1437, lies the greatest romantic mystery history never cared about. These are the love letters of queens so forgotten, even their portraits have started ghosting them, from the queen who tried to marry a goose to the one who declared war on the moon. Out of heartbreak, their stories are sleepy, strange, and just boring enough to lull you into the most regal nap of your life. So, fluff your pillow, dim the torchlight, and prepare to be mildly intrigued. The drawer is open, the letters are whispering, and history is about to yawn itself awake. If you enjoy this royal nonsense, don't forget to like, subscribe, and gently tap your goblet in approval. And let me know where you are watching from. Whether you are snuggled in a London blanket fort, hiding under your duvet in Denmark, or pretending to work in a cubicle in Kalamazoo, because nothing says global community like falling asleep to the romantic failures of queens who tried to marry poultry in the farthest corner of a castle that no one could quite remember the name of, possibly Castle May. There sat a drawer, not a magical drawer, not a cursed drawer, just a drawer. It was made of oak, smelled faintly of mothballs and regret, and squeaked like a mouse with stage fright every time it was opened. This drawer had not been opened in centuries, mostly because it was underneath a wobbly table that held a vase of fake flowers and one very judgmental cat. But one rainy Tuesday, a bored historian named Nigel, who had come to the castle to count cobwebs for his thesis, accidentally bumped the table while sneezing. The cat hissed, the vase wobbled, and the drawer creaked open with the dramatic flair of a soap opera door. Inside, beneath a petrified biscuit and a tax scroll from 1437 that simply read, "We tried," lay a bundle of letters tied with a ribbon so faded it could only be described as beige-ish. These were no ordinary letters. These were the lost love letters of forgotten queens. Not forgotten because they were unimportant. No, these queens were simply bad at branding. One had ruled a kingdom made entirely of turnips. Another had declared war on the moon. A third had once tried to marry a goose. History, being the petty gossip that it is, decided to leave them out of the textbooks. But their letters remained. The first letter was from Queen Mildred the Unremarkable, ruler of the Kingdom of Beige. Her love letter began, "Dearest Gerald, I saw you across the moat and thought, that man has a very sensible hat. I knew then that I must make you mine, or at least borrow your hat." Queen Mildred's romance was short-lived. Gerald turned out to be a scarecrow, but her passion, unmistakable. The second letter was from Queen Petronella of the Windy Isles, who fell in love with a traveling bard named Spoons. His real name was Gregory, but he insisted on being called Spoons because he played the lute with cutlery. Petronella wrote, "My darling Spoons, your music makes my heart flutter like a pigeon trapped in a chimney. I long for the day we can duet beneath the stars. You on spoons, me on interpretive dance." Their love ended when Spoons was arrested for musical fraud. Turns out he couldn't play spoons at all. He just clanged them together and shouted rhymes about soup. And so, the drawer held dozens more letters, each one a sleepy whisper from a queen whose heart had once thumped like a tambourine in a quiet library. Queen Mildred the Unremarkable ruled the kingdom of Beige, a land so colorless, even the sunsets looked like lukewarm oatmeal. Her palace was decorated in 50 shades of taupe, and her royal crest featured a sock. Not a majestic sock, just a sock. Mildred was not known for drama, flair, or charisma. She once hosted a royal ball where the theme was standing quietly, but one day, something stirred in her beige heart. Something bold, something romantic, something hat-shaped. It happened during her morning stroll around the moat, which was more puddle than waterway. There, across the murky ripples, stood a figure, tall, silent, mysterious, wearing the most sensible hat Mildred had ever seen. Her heart fluttered like a moth trapped in a filing cabinet. She rushed back to her chambers and penned the first of many love letters. Dearest Gerald, I saw you across the moat and thought, that man has a very sensible hat. I knew then that I must make you mine, or at least borrow your hat. Yours in beige affection, Mildred. She sent the letter via royal pigeon. The pigeon returned with a blank stare and a receipt for breadcrumbs. Undeterred, Mildred wrote again. Gerald, I dreamt of your hat last night. It was giving a lecture on fiscal responsibility. I swooned. Mildred weeks passed. No reply. Mildred grew lovesick. She stopped attending beige council meetings. She doodled hats in the margins of royal decrees. She even commissioned a tapestry titled Hat and Soul. Finally, her chief advisor, Sir Blunderbuss, broke the news gently. Gerald was not a man. Gerald was a scarecrow. He had been placed there to deter rebellious ducks. Mildred was devastated, but also slightly impressed. He was so emotionally unavailable, she whispered, just like a real man. She kept writing letters anyway, not to Gerald, but to his hat. The hat, she felt, understood her. It never judged. It never left. It just sat there, stoically absorbing rain and Mildred's deepest feelings. Eventually, the letters were tucked into a drawer, labeled unrequited and waterproof. And while history forgot Queen Mildred's reign, her hat-inspired heartbreak lived on in the quiet corners of castle gossip. Queen Eglantine of the Misty Marches was a woman of mystery, melodrama, and mild delusion. Her kingdom was perpetually foggy, which made visibility and accountability rather optional. It was the perfect setting for a romance that no one could see coming. Literally, Eglantine claimed to be madly in love with a man named Lord Thistlewhip, Duke of Air. He was tall, brooding, and very good at disappearing during awkward conversations. The court was skeptical. Her advisors whispered. Her ladies-in-waiting exchanged glances. But Eglantine was unwavering. He's just shy, she insisted, and allergic to witnesses. Her love letters to him were kept in a velvet box labeled, Private, do not read unless you are made of vapor. One particularly passionate letter read, My dearest Thistlewhip, I felt your presence in the garden today. Or possibly it was a breeze. Either way, I blushed. I long for the day you will hold my hand, assuming you have one. She wrote to him daily, sometimes twice. Once she sent him a love poem attached to a balloon, which promptly floated into the fireplace and exploded in a puff of glitter and mild disappointment. The palace staff played along. They set an extra place at dinner. They bowed to empty air. One footman even pretended to trip over Lord Thistlewhip's invisible foot, earning a promotion for diplomatic sensitivity. But as the years passed, Queen Eglantine's letters grew more wistful. Thistlewhip, I miss your silence. It's the most romantic thing about you. Please write back soon, or at least knock over a vase. Eventually, the letters stopped. The velvet box was tucked away in the royal attic, next to a broken harp and a taxidermy squirrel wearing a monocle. Historians would later debate whether Lord Thistlewhip ever existed. Some claimed he was a figment of loneliness. Others believed he was a metaphor for the kind of love that's felt but never seen. And one very bored scholar insisted he was just a draft. Queen Petronella of the Windy Isles was a woman of passion, poetry, and questionable taste in musicians. Her kingdom was known for its dramatic gusts of wind, which routinely blew hats into the sea and made royal hairstyles a logistical nightmare. But Petronella didn't mind. She believed wind was nature's way of applauding her decisions. One such decision was falling madly in love with a traveling bard named Spoons. His real name was Gregory, but he insisted on being called Spoons because he played the lute using cutlery. Not well, not musically, but with enthusiasm. His performances were a chaotic blend of clangs, rhymes about soup, and interpretive stomping. The court was baffled. Petronella was smitten. Her first love letter read, "My darling Spoons, your music makes my heart flutter like a pigeon trapped in a chimney. I long for the day we can duet beneath the stars, you on spoons, me on interpretive dance." The romance bloomed like a moldy peach. Spoons serenaded her with verses like, "Oh Petronella, queen of breeze, your love knocks me off my knees. Let's spoon beneath the moonlit trees and share a bowl of royal peas." Petronella swooned. The palace guards wept. The royal chef threatened to resign. But love is a fickle wind, especially in the Windy Isles. One fateful evening, during the annual Festival of Gusts, Spoons attempted a dramatic solo involving juggling ladles and reciting a sonnet while standing on a barrel. He fell into the moat. The ladles were never recovered. Worse still, an investigation revealed that Spoons was not a certified bard. He had forged his credentials using alphabet soup. The scandal rocked the kingdom. Petronella was heartbroken, but not humiliated. She declared, "Let it be known, I loved boldly, I loved loudly, and I loved a man who rhymed peas with knees. That is the kind of queen I am." She continued writing letters to Spoons long after he was banished to the Isle of Misused Utensils. Her final letter read, "Dear Spoons, I miss your clangs. The silence is too melodic. Yours in rhythm and ruin, Petronella." The letters were stored in a drawer labeled musical regrets and cutlery crimes, and though history forgot her reign, the wind still howls through the palace halls, sounding suspiciously like someone banging spoons together in the distance. Queen Hortensia of the Verdant Vale was a woman of earthy wisdom, botanical ambition, and a romantic weakness for root vegetables. Her kingdom was lush, green, and slightly damp, perfect for growing turnips, the size of small sheep. Hortensia didn't just rule her land, she gardened it. She spoke to her plants. She once knighted a particularly noble-looking zucchini, but her heart belonged to one turnip. It began innocently enough. She was inspecting the royal vegetable patch when she spotted it, a turnip, so symmetrical, so radiant, so emotionally available that she gasped. "This," she whispered, "is no ordinary tuber. This is destiny." She named him Sir Turnipton. Her advisors were alarmed. Her subjects were confused. Her chef was furious. But Hortensia was in love. She began writing letters to Sir Turnipton, which she tucked gently beneath his leafy crown. "My dearest Turnipton, your silence speaks volumes. Your firmness inspires me. I long to hold you, but fear bruising your noble flesh. She built him a throne made of compost and velvet. She hosted candlelit dinners, where she dined alone, occasionally glancing at Turnipton and sighing. She even commissioned a portrait of the two of them, though the artist struggled to capture the turnip's emotional depth. One day she wrote, Turnipton, I know others mock our love. They say you're just a vegetable. But I say, love is organic, and you are certified. Unfortunately, tragedy struck during the Great Harvest Festival. A well-meaning servant, unaware of Turnipton's royal status, mistook him for a garnish. The soup was delicious. Hortensia was inconsolable. She declared a week of mourning. She wore a veil made of kale. She banned all root vegetables from the palace, and she wrote one final letter. My beloved Turnipton, you were peeled too soon. May you rest in the great salad bowl of eternity. The letter was placed in a drawer labeled Edible Heartbreaks and Compostable Memories. And while history forgot Queen Hortensia's reign, her love for Turnipton remains the most tender tale of produce passion ever whispered in the royal fields. Queen Beryl of the glistening realm was known for her shimmering gowns, her dramatic speeches, and her tendency to take heartbreak very personally. Her kingdom sparkled with gemstones, glittering lakes, and citizens who were legally required to compliment her twice a day. But beneath the sparkle lay a heart that bruised like a peach in a purse. She fell in love with a stargazer named Alphonse, a man who claimed the moon spoke to him in riddles. He wore robes made of curtain fabric and once tried to kiss a telescope. Beryl was enchanted. She wrote him love letters sealed with moon-shaped wax and sprinkled with crushed sapphires. My dearest Alphonse, your eyes reflect the cosmos. Your beard resembles a comet. I long to orbit your heart, even if it's shaped like a crescent. Their romance was brief, but intense. They danced under moonlight. They exchanged poems about gravity. He gave her a rock he claimed was lunar. It was actually a potato. Then, one night, Alphonse vanished. Rumors swirled. Some said he floated away in a balloon. Others claimed he was abducted by moon spirits. Beryl was devastated. She stared at the moon for hours, demanding answers. The moon, as usual, remained silent. So, she declared war. Let it be known, she proclaimed, that the moon has stolen my beloved. I shall retaliate with glitter and vengeance. She launched a series of diplomatic letters addressed to the moon, CEO the sky. One read, Dear Moon, return Alphonse, or prepare to be bedazzled. I have sequins. I am not afraid to use them. She assembled an army of poets, astronomers, and mildly confused goats. They marched in circles, chanting rhymes about heartbreak and lunar betrayal. The moon did not respond. It just hung there, smug and spherical. Eventually, Beryl's advisors convinced her to stand down. The goats were tired. The poets were rhyming dangerously. And the moon, despite being emotionally unavailable, was not technically an enemy. Her final letter read, Alphonse, if you're out there, send me a sign or a potato. I miss your cosmic nonsense. Yours in orbit, Barry. The letters were stored in a drawer labeled Celestial Regrets and Potato-Based Lies. And while history forgot Queen Beryl's moon war, her love remains the only known romance to result in a declaration of hostility against a celestial body. Queen Theodora of the Feathered Fens was a woman of elegance, eccentricity, and an alarming fondness for waterfowl. Her kingdom was built around a series of ponds marshes, and one suspiciously large birdbath. Theodora ruled with grace, wisdom, and a tendency to name every goose she met. But one goose stood out. His name was Reginald, and he was magnificent. His feathers gleamed like polished ivory. His honk had a timbre that stirred the soul. He waddled with purpose. Theodora was enchanted. She began writing love letters to him, which she tucked into his nesting straw with great ceremony. My dearest Reginald, your honk echoes in my heart. When you flapped your wings at me yesterday, I felt it was a proposal. I accept. Her advisers were horrified. Her subjects were confused. The royal chaplain fainted, but Theodora was resolute. She announced her engagement to Reginald at a royal banquet, where the goose promptly stole a dinner roll and bit a duke. Still, she wrote, Reginald, our love defies species, logic, and basic etiquette. I long to share my throne with you. Even if you poop on it. Preparations for the wedding began. A tiny tuxedo was commissioned. A pond-side altar was built. Theodora practiced her vows in front of a mirror, occasionally honking for dramatic effect. But alas, Reginald was not ready for commitment. On the eve of the wedding, he flew away with a wild flock, leaving behind only a feather and a trail of scandal. Theodora was heartbroken. She declared a national day of mourning, during which all citizens were required to wear feathered hats and avoid poultry-based meals. Her final letter read, Reginald, you flew from my life, but not from my heart. May your wings carry you far, and may you never forget the queen who loved you more than grain. The letters were stored in a drawer labeled Avian Affairs and Honk-Related Heartache. And while history forgot Queen Theodora's reign, her love story remains the only royal engagement to be cancelled due to spontaneous migration. Queen Winifred of the Silent Stacks ruled over the Kingdom of Quiet, a land where every citizen was required to whisper, and the loudest sound was usually someone sneezing into a velvet handkerchief. Her palace was built like a library, with spiral staircases, dusty tomes, and a royal decree that banned shouting, clapping, and enthusiastic humming. Winifred herself was a woman of few words and many bookmarks. She spent her days cataloging scrolls, alphabetizing treaties, and shushing people with regal authority. But one day, in the dim glow of the candlelit archives, she met Edgar, the palace librarian. Edgar was tall, mysterious, and spoke exclusively in footnotes. His voice was so soft, it was rumored he once read an entire epic poem, and no one noticed. Winifred was enchanted. She began writing him love letters on parchment so thin they could be mistaken for onion skin. She tucked them between volumes of royal etiquette for the emotionally constipated and how to rule quietly without crying. Dearest Edgar, your silence is louder than any sonnet. When you handed me that overdue scroll yesterday, I felt our fingers almost touch. I have not washed my hands since. Their romance unfolded in whispers and glances. They exchanged overdue fines like love tokens. He once left her a note that read, see page 347, footnote 12. She swooned. It was a quote from a treaty about grain tariffs, but she interpreted it as a metaphor for longing. One day she wrote, Edgar, I dreamt we were cataloging together. You filed my heart under W for want. Yours in quiet desperation, Winifred. But alas, Edgar was transferred to the Royal Archives of the Northern Silence, a place so remote even echoes refused to visit. Winifred was heartbroken. She banned loud shoes. She declared a national whispering contest, and she wrote one final letter. Edgar, I miss your hush. May your shelving be straight, and your scrolls never crinkle. Forever footnoted, Winifred. The letters were stored in a drawer labeled Unspoken Affections and Alphabetized Ache. And while history forgot Queen Winifred's reign, her love remains the quietest romance ever recorded. Barely audible, deeply felt, Queen Maud of the Blunt Highlands was a woman of fierce intellect, sharp wit, and a romantic streak that occasionally collided with reality. Her kingdom was known for its rocky terrain, its stubborn goats, and its annual festival of sensible decisions. Maud herself was a scholar queen, fluent in 5 languages, and capable of solving riddles before breakfast. So naturally, she fell in love with a man who couldn't read. His name was Sir Clovis, a knight of impressive biceps, dazzling armor, and the literary comprehension of a damp sponge. He was brave, loyal, and once tried to joust a windmill because it looked suspicious. Maud was charmed. She began writing him love letters, elegant, poetic, and filled with metaphors, so layered they required footnotes. She left them on his saddle, tucked into his gauntlets, and once even tied one to a falcon, wearing a tiny beret. Dearest Clovis, your eyes are twin moons in the night sky of my longing. Your silence is a sonnet, your sword, a punctuation mark in the epic of my heart. This is a very fancy menu. I'll have the moon thing with extra sauce. Maud was undeterred. She wrote again, Clovis, I ache for your presence, like a library aches for silence. Meet me beneath the willow tree at dusk. Bring your heart, and possibly a dictionary. He arrived at dawn, carrying a wheelbarrow full of turnips and a confused duck. I thought you said willow duck feast, he explained. Their romance was a comedy of miscommunication. She wrote him a sonnet. He used it to polish his sword. She quoted ancient philosophers. He thought they were tavern names, but Maud adored him. His sincerity was pure. His confusion was endearing, and his muscles were, well, distracting. Her final letter read, Clovis, you may never read these words, but I write them anyway, because love, like poetry, doesn't always need to be understood. It just needs to be felt. Yours in scribbled devotion, Maud. The letters were stored in a drawer, labeled Unread Affections and Misinterpreted Metaphors. And while history forgot Queen Maud's reign, her love story remains the only known romance to be mistaken for a lunch order. Queen Letitia of the drowsy Dominion was a monarch of moonlit moods and majestic naps. Her kingdom was famous for its national siesta schedule, its award-winning pillow factories, and a royal anthem that was just a lullaby played on harp and yawn. Letitia herself was known to conduct entire cabinet meetings while reclining on a velvet chaise, occasionally mumbling policy suggestions in her sleep. So, it was no surprise when she fell in love with a man she only met in dreams. His name was Sir Somnor, a mysterious figure who appeared nightly in her sleep, wearing a cloak made of mist and speaking in riddles that sounded suspiciously like bedtime affirmations. He never showed up during the day. He never attended royal banquets, but every night he was there, dancing with her in moonlit gardens, whispering sweet nothings like, You are the blanket of my soul. Letitia was smitten. She began writing love letters to him each morning, still wrapped in her royal duvet, her crown slightly askew. Dearest Somnor, last night you kissed my hand and turned into a cloud. I woke up holding a pillow and crying softly into my breakfast. I miss you already. Her advisors were concerned. Your Majesty, they said, this man may not be real. Letitia waved them off. Neither is my schedule, she replied. Before falling asleep, mid-sentence, she tried to summon Somnor during the day by napping in increasingly elaborate locations. The throne room, the royal stables, once even inside a giant teapot. But he only came at night, and only in dreams. One day, she wrote, Somnor, I tried to dream of you during my afternoon nap, but all I got was a talking sandwich. Please return tonight. I miss your foggy embrace. Eventually, the palace hired a dream interpreter who concluded that Somnor was either a subconscious manifestation of Letitia's longing or a sleep-induced hallucination caused by excessive lavender tea. Letitia was devastated. She banned lavender. She declared a national week of wistful sighing, and she wrote one final letter, my beloved Somnor, if you are but a dream, then let me sleep forever. But if you are real, knock twice on my pillow. Yours in eternal drowsiness, Letitia. The letters were stored in a drawer labeled Nocturnal Affairs and Pillow-Scented Passion, and while history forgot Queen Letitia's reign, her love remains the only royal romance conducted entirely in REM sleep. Queen Isolde of the Fragrant Court was a monarch of elegance, extravagance, and an olfactory obsession that bordered on weaponized. Her palace was a perfumed paradise. Every hallway misted hourly with rose water, every throne cushion scented with lavender, and every royal decree sealed with a spritz of citrus musk. Diplomats often fainted upon arrival. The pigeons smelled amazing. Isolde believed that love should be aromatic. So when she fell for Lord Percival, a visiting noble with a nose so refined he could detect deceit in a handshake, she knew her letters had to smell like passion itself. She commissioned a special ink, infused with jasmine, sandalwood, and a mysterious ingredient known only as essence of yearning. It was said to make the reader fall in love instantly or sneeze uncontrollably. Her first letter read, Dearest Percival, I write to you with ink steeped in longing and scented with my soul. If this letter makes your heart flutter or your sinuses swell, know that it is love. She sent it via perfumed falcon. The falcon returned dazed, smelling like a romantic forest fire. Percival responded with a polite note. Your Majesty, your words are lovely. Your ink has melted my monocle. Undeterred, Isolde doubled the fragrance. Her next letter was so potent it caused a minor diplomatic incident when a courier passed out mid-delivery and landed in a barrel of pickled eels. Percival, I dreamt of you last night. You were wearing a crown made of violets and whispering compliments to my elbows. I awoke in a cloud of bergamot and yearning. The palace staff began wearing nose plugs. The royal archivist developed a permanent squint. One advisor tried to read a letter and accidentally proposed to a vase. Eventually, Percival fled the kingdom, citing olfactory overload and romantic confusion. Isolde was heartbroken. She banned unscented paper. She declared a national day of aromatic mourning, and she wrote one final letter. Percival, if you ever return, I shall greet you with a fragrance so subtle it will only haunt your dreams. Until then, I remain yours, in scent and sorrow. Isolde. The letters were stored in a drawer, labeled Fragrant Failures and Aromatic Regrets. And while history forgot Queen Isolde's reign, her love story remains the only romance ever classified as a public health hazard. Queen Claribel of the Giggling Glades was a monarch of mirth, mischief, and a laugh so contagious it once caused a diplomatic hiccup in 3 neighboring kingdoms. Her court was a carnival of joy. Jesters juggled tax scrolls, ministers wore party hats, and the royal anthem was performed exclusively on kazoo. But beneath the glitter and giggles, Claribel harbored a secret. She was hopelessly in love with her court jester, Bibble. Bibble was a master of slapstick, sarcasm, and suspiciously poetic limericks. He wore bells on his elbows, spoke in riddles, and once convinced a visiting ambassador that the royal goose was the minister of agriculture. Claribel adored him. She began writing love letters to him, disguised as performance reviews. Dear Bibble, your comedic timing is impeccable. Your juggling of emotions, especially mine, is deeply moving. I rate your heart 5 stars, would fall for again. But Bibble had a secret of his own. He wasn't just a jester. He was actually Duke Reginald of Wobbleford, heir to a vast estate and a master of disguise. He had infiltrated the court to escape an arranged marriage to a woman who collected antique spoons and spoke only in riddles. Claribel discovered the truth when she accidentally walked in on Bibble, removing his jester makeup and reciting Shakespeare to a confused llama. She was stunned. You're a duke? She whispered. Bibble bowed dramatically. A duke, yes, but also a fool, for falling in love with a queen who thinks fart jokes are romantic. The romance blossomed in secret. They exchanged letters hidden inside juggling pins and hollowed out loaves of bread. One read, Reginald, your nobility is impressive, your wit irresistible. I long to run away with you, to a land where titles done matter and laughter is currency. But alas, duty called. Reginald was summoned back to Wobbleford to assume his title and marry a woman named Petunia, who wore a monocle and had strong opinions about soup. Claribel was heartbroken. She declared a royal week of melancholy giggling. She banned sad trombones, and she wrote one final letter. My dearest Duke of Jokes, you juggled my heart and dropped it gently. May your duchy be dull, and your soup forever lukewarm. Yours in laughter and longing, Claribel. The letters were stored in a drawer, labeled Noble Nonsense and Jester Jealousy. And while history forgot Queen Claribel's reign, her love remains the only royal affair to be both tragic and hilariously well-timed. Queen Euphemia of the Bubbling Borough was a monarch of mystery, mischief, and a deep belief that romance could be brewed, preferably in a cauldron. Her kingdom was famous for its apothecaries, its enchanted teacups, and its annual festival of mildly magical mishaps. Euphemia herself was a skilled potion maker, though her concoctions had a tendency to cause side effects ranging from spontaneous hiccups to temporary invisibility. She fell in love with Sir Barnaby, a dashing knight with a jawline carved by destiny and the emotional depth of a decorative shield. He was brave, polite, and once complimented her potion labels. Euphemia was smitten. To win his heart, she brewed a love potion, subtle, elegant, and allegedly hiccup-free. She wrote him a letter to accompany the vial. Dearest Barnaby, enclosed is a potion brewed with longing, lavender, and a dash of destiny. Drink it, and you shall feel what I feel, unless you're allergic to destiny. Unfortunately, she grabbed the wrong vial. Instead of the love potion, she sent him potion .47, which caused uncontrollable hiccups and mild romantic confusion. Barnaby drank it, hiccuped for 3 days, and fell in love with a tapestry depicting a goose in a bonnet. Euphemia was mortified. She wrote again, Barnaby, I apologize for the hiccups. And the goose. My heart still beats for you, though it now sounds suspiciously like a kettle. Barnaby, ever the gentleman, responded with a note that read, Your potion was powerful. I hiccuped through a duel and won. I now associate your love with victory and mild throat discomfort. Encouraged, Euphemia tried again. This time, she sent potion number 12, which was supposed to inspire poetic speech. Barnaby drank it and began reciting limericks about soup. The court was confused. The goose tapestry was jealous. Eventually, Euphemia gave up on potions and wrote one final letter. Barnaby, love cannot be bottled. It must be brewed slowly, with patience and a pinch of chaos. If you ever tire of soup rhymes and goose tapestries, my heart and my cauldron await yours in magical misadventure, Euphemia. The letters were stored in a drawer, labeled Potion Problems and Goose-Related Regrets. And while history forgot Queen Euphemia's reign, her love story remains the only romance to be derailed by hiccups and decorative poultry. Queen Agatha of the Skyward Citadel ruled a kingdom perched so high in the mountains, even the clouds had to RSVP. Her realm was known for its breathtaking views, its altitude-induced forgetfulness, and its elite pigeon postal service, feathered couriers trained to deliver messages with precision, dignity, and occasional sass. Agatha was a romantic at heart. She believed love should soar, preferably with wings and a wax seal. So when she fell for Prince Leopold of the Lowlands, she began sending him love letters via her finest pigeons, each one perfumed, ribboned, and addressed with dramatic flair. Dearest Leopold, my heart flutters like a pigeon in a headwind. I send you this letter with my most loyal bird, Sir Flapwell. May he deliver my longing with grace and minimal pooping. Unfortunately, Sir Flapwell had a rebellious streak. Instead of flying south to the lowlands, he detoured to a bakery in the Midlands, where he was fed croutons and adopted by a woman named Myrtle. Agatha waited weeks for a reply. None came. She sent another pigeon. This one got distracted by a shiny spoon and joined a traveling circus. A third pigeon delivered the letter to a goat. Still, Agatha persisted. Leopold, if you receive this, know that I have sent 12 pigeons, 3 scrolls, and 1 emotional sigh. If you do not receive this, then I am talking to a goat again. Eventually, a reply arrived, via turtle. It read, Your Majesty, I have received none of your letters. I assumed you had ghosted me. Also, I now own a bakery. Agatha was devastated. She summoned her pigeon trainers, held a royal inquiry, and discovered that half her birds had joined rival kingdoms. One had become a motivational speaker, and another had started a newsletter called Winged Whispers. She wrote one final letter, hand-delivered by a very determined squirrel. Leopold, my pigeons failed me, but my heart remains loyal. If you ever wish to soar with me again, bring breadcrumbs and forgiveness. Yours in altitude and avian chaos, Agatha. The letters were stored in a drawer labeled Feathered Fiascos and Unsent Sentiments. And while history forgot Queen Agatha's reign, her love story remains the only royal romance to be derailed by birds with commitment issues. Queen Sybil of the Gilded Hallways was a monarch of mystery, introspection, and an unsettling number of mirrors. Her palace was a labyrinth of reflections, walls lined with polished glass, ceilings that shimmered with vanity, and a royal bath that required 3 attendants just to avoid eye contact with one us own knees. Sybil was known for her beauty, her solitude, and her tendency to hold long conversations with her own reflection. While other queens fell for knights, poets, or poultry, Sybil fell for someone who always knew what she was thinking. Herself. It began innocently. One morning, while adjusting her crown in the grand mirror of modest majesty, she caught her own gaze and whispered, "You understand me?" Her reflection nodded. It was love. She began writing letters to her mirror. "Dearest me, today you looked especially regal. When you raised your eyebrow at that ambassador, I felt a flutter in my soul. You are the only one who truly listens, except when I talk behind your back." Her advisors were concerned. "Your Majesty," they said, "perhaps you should meet someone who doesn't live in a frame." Sybil waved them off. "Why settle for less than perfection?" she replied, before blowing a kiss to the mirror and declaring it a national holiday. She wrote daily, "My beloved reflection, I saw you again this morning. You were radiant. I tried to wink at you, but we did it at the same time, and it got awkward." She hosted candlelit dinners for 2, herself and her mirror. She commissioned a portrait of her reflection, which confused the artist deeply. She even attempted a duet, though it mostly involved humming and dramatic gesturing. But one day, tragedy struck. A visiting diplomat leaned against the grand mirror and cracked it. Sybil was devastated. "You shattered my soulmate," she sobbed, "and also my hallway aesthetic." She wrote one final letter, tear-stained and slightly smudged with face powder. "My dearest me, though you are fractured, I still see pieces of us. May your shards reflect our love forever. Yours in vanity and vulnerability, Sybil." The letters were stored in a drawer labeled "Reflected Affections and Glass-Based Grief." And while history forgot Queen Sybil's reign, her love remains the only royal romance to end in heartbreak and 7 years of bad luck. Queen Drusilla of the Clockwork Coast was a monarch of mystery, gears, and grand delusions about time. Her kingdom ran on sundials, cuckoo clocks, and one very moody hourglass that occasionally refused to flip. Drusilla herself was fascinated by time travel. She once tried to outlaw Mondays and declared that naps should be retroactive. So, when a stranger appeared in her court claiming to be a poet from the future, she was instantly intrigued. His name was Thymion, and he wore a cloak made of calendar pages and spoke in rhymes that referenced events no one understood. He claimed to have come from the year 4000 and Tuesday, and insisted that Drusilla's love letters would one day be studied in holographic classrooms. She was smitten. Her first letter read, "Dearest Thymion, your words bend time like my royal spoon bends soup. I long to be your past, your present, and your poetic punctuation." Thymion responded with verses that made no sense but sounded profound. "O Drusilla, queen of gears, your love echoes through future years. In 2093, they'll name a sandwich after you. It will contain pickles and destiny." Drusilla swooned. She began writing him daily, letters sealed with wax, shaped like hourglasses, and sprinkled with crushed sundial dust. One read, "Thymion, I dreamt of you last night. You were riding a hover goose and quoting Shakespeare backwards. I woke up confused and slightly aroused. But as time passed, or looped, depending on Thymion's mood, inconsistencies emerged. He claimed to have met her great-great-granddaughter at a disco in space. He said her kingdom would one day be ruled by sentient teapots. He predicted that socks would become currency. Her advisors grew suspicious. Your Majesty, they said, this man may be a fraud, or just very creative. Drusilla refused to believe it until she caught Thymion trying to sell her royal sundial to a merchant in exchange for future snacks. Heartbroken but dignified, she wrote one final letter. Thymion, whether you came from the future or just the back alley of a poetry tavern, know that my heart ticked for you. May your rhymes find rhythm, and your hover goose never deflate. Yours in timeless confusion, Drusilla. The letters were stored in a drawer, labeled Temporal Affairs and Chronological Nonsense. And while history forgot Queen Drusilla's reign, her love remains the only royal romance to be derailed by time travel and sandwich prophecy. Queen Octavia of the Pantry Provinces was a monarch of culinary precision, romantic ambition, and a deep, abiding love for well-organized shopping. Her kingdom was famed for its spice markets, its alphabetized pantries, and its royal decree that all citizens must know the difference between cumin and caraway. Octavia was a passionate letter writer. Her scrolls were legendary, elegant, poetic, and occasionally laminated for freshness. So when she fell for Count Basil, a visiting noble with a jawline like a breadstick and a voice like melted butter, she decided to confess her love the only way she knew how, in writing. Unfortunately, she was multitasking. One morning, while composing a heartfelt declaration of affection, she was also drafting her weekly grocery list. In a moment of regal distraction, she sent the wrong scroll. Dearest Basil, my heart beats for you like a whisk and cream. I long to share my table, my soul, and my pantry. Please bring 3 onions, 1 wheel of brie, something romantic but low in sodium. Yours in hunger and hope, Octavia. Basil was confused. He arrived at the palace with a basket of groceries and a bouquet of parsley. I wasn't sure if this was a metaphor, he said, but I brought snacks just in case. Octavia was mortified. She tried to explain, but Basil, charmed by her culinary candor, insisted they dine together. They shared brie. They diced onions. They fell in love somewhere between the appetizer and the awkward silence that followed her attempt to rhyme shallot with desire. She wrote again, Basil, you are the spice in my stew, the glaze on my roast, the unexpected raisin in my rice. I never meant to send you my shopping list, but perhaps it was fate. Also, we're out of nutmeg. Their romance blossomed over shared recipes and accidental metaphors. But alas, Basil was called back to his own province to settle a dispute over soup taxation. Octavia was heartbroken. She declared a national week of emotional snacking, and she wrote one final letter. My beloved Basil, you are the perfect ingredient in my life. May your pantry be full, your spices fresh, and your heart forever simmering. Yours in bittersweet seasoning, Octavia. The letters were stored in a drawer labeled Edible Emotions and Grocery Misfires. And while history forgot Queen Octavia's reign, her love remains the only royal romance, sparked by onions and sealed with cheese. Queen Blanche of the Quillwood realm was a monarch of elegance, eloquence, and a tragic tendency to write faster than she could think. Her kingdom was famed for its calligraphy schools, its ink fountains, and its annual Festival of Flourish, where citizens competed to write the fanciest grocery lists. Blanche was a romantic, a poet, and a woman who believed that love should be handwritten, preferably in cursive, so elaborate it required translation. So, when she fell for Lord Percival of Penstroke, a noble with a chin like a cliff and a voice like velvet dipped in grammar, she poured her heart into a letter. Unfortunately, she made a typo. Dearest Percival, my heart is yours. My soul is yours. My horse is yours. She meant to write heart. She wrote horse. Percival, ever the gentleman, arrived the next morning with a saddle, a carrot, and a look of quiet confusion. Blanche was mortified. I meant heart, she cried, not horse. Percival, trying to be gracious, replied, I'm honored either way. I've always wanted a mare named Destiny. Still, Blanche persisted. She wrote again, Percival, I apologize for the equestrian enthusiasm. My love gallops for you, but not literally. Please return the horse. She's emotionally fragile. But the damage was done. The court began whispering. The royal stablemaster demanded clarification. The horse, now named Yours Truly, developed a taste for romantic poetry and refused to trot without sonnets. Blanche tried to laugh it off. She hosted a ball themed Love and Livestock. She commissioned a tapestry of her and Percival riding into the sunset, awkwardly side saddle. She even wrote a poem titled Ode to a Typo and the Stallion of Regret. Eventually, Percival was reassigned to a distant province where horses were banned due to a hay-related scandal. Blanche was heartbroken. She declared a national day of spelling checks, and she wrote one final letter. My beloved Percival, you were never meant to ride away. May your heart be light, your saddle secure, and your love typo-free. Yours in hoofbeats and heartbreak, Blanche. The letters were stored in a drawer, labeled Equine Errors and Romantic Misprints. And while history forgot Queen Blanche's reign, her love remains the only royal romance derailed by a misplaced vowel and a very moody mare. Queen Elfrida of the Slumbering Spires was a monarch of serenity, snoozes, and a bedtime routine so sacred it was written into the Constitution. Her kingdom was quiet, cozy, and perpetually drowsy, where yawning was a form of greeting, and the national anthem was just a lullaby hummed by sheep. Elfrida was known for her beauty, her wisdom, and her ability to fall asleep mid-sentence. She once nodded off during a coronation and woke up wearing someone else's crown. But her heart was wide awake, especially when it came to Sir Dorian, a dreamy diplomat with a voice like velvet and a tendency to speak in soothing metaphors. She wrote him a love letter after a particularly romantic nap. Dearest Dorian, I dreamt of you last night. You were reading me poetry while tucking me in with metaphors. I awoke with your name on my lips and drool on my pillow. I believe this is love. She sent the letter via Sleepy Express, a courier service that delivered messages only during nap time. Unfortunately, the courier fell asleep en route and dropped the letter into a drawer labeled to be delivered. Eventually, Elfrida waited and waited, and then, quite accidentally, fell into a 100-year nap. It wasn't planned. She simply lay down for a quick royal rest and woke up a century later, mildly confused and craving toast. Her kingdom had evolved, now ruled by her great-great-grandniece, Queen Snorri, the slightly awake. The palace had been redecorated in shades of modern drowsy, and Sir Dorian, long gone. But the letter had finally been delivered. It had aged, slightly crinkled, and smelled faintly of lavender and historical irony. Dorian had received it decades earlier, and according to palace records, had written a reply. My dearest Elfrida, I waited for you. I whispered your name to the stars. But time is a blanket that tucks us in separately. May your dreams be sweet, and your heart forever rested. Elfrida was heartbroken, but also well rested. She declared a national week of wistful yawning. She commissioned a mural titled Love in Rem, and she wrote one final letter. Dorian, I slept through our love, but I feel it still. May your memory be my lullaby. Yours in timeless tenderness, Elfrida. The letters were stored in a drawer labeled Delayed Devotion and Nap-Induced Nostalgia, and while history forgot Queen Elfrida's reign, her love remains the only royal romance paused by a century-long snooze. The drawer had been opened, the letters read, the queens remembered, but tucked behind the last parchment, beneath a faded ribbon and a crumb from a long-lost biscuit banquet, lay one final scroll. It was unsigned, unsealed, unsent, and unlike the others, it was written not to a person, but to love itself. Scholars debated its origin. Some claimed it was penned by Queen Nobody, a monarch erased from history by a clerical error and a spilled teacup. Others believed it was written by all the queens, a collective sigh stitched together from centuries of longing, laughter, and goose-related heartbreak. The letter read, To whom it may concern, and we hope it's you. We have loved boldly. We have loved badly. We have loved scarecrows, spoons, ghosts, geese, and men who couldn't read. We have written our hearts into scrolls, sealed them with hope, and sent them into the wind. Some were answered, most were not, but still, we wrote, because love, even when forgotten, is never truly lost. It lingers in ink, in sighs, in drawers that squeak like secrets. If you find this letter, know that you are part of our story now. Read it, smile, sleep, and maybe, just maybe, write one of your own. The scroll was placed back in the drawer, now labeled for dreamers and drowsy hearts, and while history forgot the names of these queens, their letters remain, a bedtime archive of absurd affection, sleepy sincerity, and royal nonsense. And so, the drawer closes, the letters rest, and the queens, forgotten by history, but remembered by dreamers, fade softly into the folds of bedtime. Their romances may have been ridiculous, their suitors questionable, and their metaphors wildly unhinged, but their hearts were full, their ink was sincere, and their stories were just sleepy enough to lull even the most restless soul. If you've giggled, sighed, or yawned your way through these royal whispers, then you've done exactly what they hoped. Listened, smiled, and maybe drifted off, somewhere between the goose engagement and the scented heartbreak. So fluff your pillow, silence your scrolls, and let the moonlight carry you gently into your own kingdom of dreams. Good night, noble reader. Sleep regally.